Hey everyone, how's it going? Today, I want to talk to you about a book that really shook me in the best possible way. It's called Lost Connections by Johann Hari. You know how sometimes a book just clicks with something you've been feeling, or makes you see the world in a totally new light? This was one of those for me. I picked it up because, like a lot of people, I've had my own struggles with feeling down, and I was always told it was just, well, a chemical thing in my brain. This book totally flips that idea on its head, and honestly, it felt like a breath of fresh air. Harry starts by sharing his own story, which is really brave and relatable. He was 18 when he swallowed his first antidepressant, thinking it was this chemical kiss that would finally fix his broken machinery. He became an evangelist for these drugs, even writing articles about them as a journalist, convinced that depression was simply a disease of the brain. But then a mystery started to bug him. How could he still feel quite depressed even after 13 years on these medications, taking higher and higher doses? And why were so many people around him, including his own family, also on psychiatric drugs? He realized he had to dig deeper, even though challenging his long-held beliefs about his own pain felt more dangerous than interviewing Mexican drug cartels. So, why did he find out about those pills many of us have relied on? Well, he dove into the science with Professor Irving Kirsch, a leading expert on the placebo effect. Remember those old healing ones from the 18th century that supposedly drew out pain? It turns out they worked a surprising amount of the time because people believed they would. Kirsch and his team meticulously analyzed studies submitted to the DME for popular antidepressants like Prozac and Paxil, which Hari himself took, and what they found was mind-blowing. Only 25% of the antidepressant effect was due to the actual chemicals. 50 was from the story you were told about them, the placebo effect, and another 25 was just natural recovery. Can you believe that? The big pharma companies often selectively published only the good results, hiding the rest. In fact, Hari learned that his own drug company for Paxil had privately admitted it didn't work for teenagers, but continued to promote it anyway, even paying out millions in court for deception. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Then he tackles the infamous chemical imbalance theory itself. Hari found that this idea that depression is caused by low serotonin began quite accidentally in the 1950s with the tuberculosis drug that made patients euphoric. Scientists then theorized that maybe it was increasing serotonin, but as Professor David Healy, a leading expert, puts it, there was never any basis for it ever. It was just marketing copy. Even drugs that increase serotonin and those that reduce it or affect other chemicals entirely seem to have the same modest effect. Kirsch concludes it's just an accident of history. So if you've been told your brain is broken, this book says that's likely a false map. What about the idea that mental health problems are just isolated brain malfunctions, completely separate from our lives? The book introduces us to Joanne Cacciatore, who works with grieving people. She points out a bizarre contradiction in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual DMS, the Bible for diagnosing mental illness, the grief exception. If you lost someone close, you could show severe depression symptoms for a while and not be considered mentally ill. But if your pain lasted longer, or if it was caused by anything else, a meaningless job, a failed marriage, homelessness, you were just mentally ill. This, she argues, shows a fundamental mistake. We don't consider context for our pain. Instead of asking what's the matter with you, we should be asking what matters to you. So, if it's not just a chemical imbalance, what is causing our widespread despair? Hari spent years traveling, interviewing scientists and people who experience profound distress, and he found 9 types of disconnection. He calls them the real causes of depression and anxiety, and they're largely in the world and the way we're living in it. Let's dive into a few of them, because they are truly insightful. First, there's disconnection from meaningful work. Think about Joe, who should paint cans all day, every day, feeling like there was no hope, and what's the point? He'd even started taking OxyContin just to numb himself to the monotony. This isn't just Joe. Michael Marmot's famous Whitehall studies on British civil servants showed that it's not high responsibility that causes stress, but a lack of control, meaninglessness, and low status in your job. So working a soul-destroying job is one of the most stressful things you can do. leading to physical and mental illness. It makes complete sense, doesn't it? If you spend most of your waking hours doing something you hate, how can that not affect you? Then there's the disconnection from other people. John Cacioppo's research reveals that loneliness causes your stress hormones to absolutely soar. As much as experiencing a physical attack, being deeply lonely has the same effect on your health as obesity. Robert Putnam's bowling alone phenomenon highlights how we've dismantled our tribes, doing things alone more than any previous generation, and our obsessive use of social media. It's not a true connection, it's often an attempt to fill the hole left by real face-to-face connection. Hilary Cash, who runs an internet addiction rehab, says almost all her patients were anxious or depressed before their compulsion began. The online world offered them a substitute for meaning, status, and a tribe that was missing offline. Next up, disconnection from meaningful values. Psychologist Tim Kasser found that the more materialistic you are thinking happiness comes from accumulating stuff and status, the higher your levels of depression and anxiety. Our culture constantly bombards us with the message that buying things will make us happy. But it's like eating junk food. It appeals to a basic need, but fills us with psychological toxins. It poisons relationships, makes us constantly monitor how we look to others, and crowds out truly satisfying intrinsic values like connection and purpose. And a big one that hits hard: disconnection from childhood trauma. Dr. Vincent Folletti's Adverse Childhood Experiences, a study involving 17,000 people, showed a profound link. The more categories of trauma you experienced as a child, the radically more likely you were to become depressed as an adult. Emotional abuse, surprisingly, was more likely to cause depression than even sexual molestation. What he learned was that conditions like severe obesity were often the solution to problems that the rest of us knew nothing about, a way to protect oneself from unwanted attention. He suggests that blaming yourself for childhood trauma, though irrational, gives a child a sense of control over a powerless situation. Hari also touches on disconnection from status and respect, using Robert Sapolsky's Bookworm studies to show how low status leads to physical and psychological stress, and how this applies to human inequality and disconnection from the natural world, where studies show that moving to green areas reduces depression, suggesting our innate biophilia, a love for natural landscapes, is crucial for our well-being. Finally, there's disconnection from a hopeful or secure future, which can drive up suicide rates, as seen in Michael Chandler's work with First Nations communities. When your future feels constantly fragmented, like for Angela working on stable call center jobs, it's hard to feel anything but despair. Okay, so if these are the causes, what are the solutions? This is where the book truly shines. Hari calls them reconnections, and he thinks of them as a different kind of antidepressant. One powerful reconnection is to other people. He takes us to Cuddy, a housing project in Berlin, where residents were facing eviction and despair. A woman named Nurai was so depressed she was planning to kill herself. But when neighbors rallied together to protest, blocking streets and demanding rent freezes, something amazing happened. People who were once suspicious of each other, Turkish immigrants, left-wing squatters, gay people, came together, built a community, and supported each other. Nurai herself went from suicidal to becoming the leading activist, even physically blocking evictions in her wheelchair. The fight gave them a sense of community, a feeling that they weren't broken up individuals but a collective. This also includes social prescribing, like at the Bromley Babao Center in London, where doctors prescribe activities like gardening or pottery instead of just pills. Lisa, who was once shut away with anxiety and eating chocolate ice cream, found profound healing and reconnected with others by working in a community garden. It's about listening to what matters to you in a person's life, not just what's the matter with you. Then there's reconnection to meaningful work. The book introduces Baltimore Bicycle Works, a bike shop run as a democratic cooperative. Here, everyone has a say in decisions, and responsibilities are shared. The workers, like Meredith and Alex, feel dramatically happier, less anxious, and less depressed than in traditional top-down jobs. Even though the actual work might be similar, the sense of control and purpose infuses it with meaning. It's about feeling useful and having an impact, which is a fundamental human desire. Hari also explores reconnection to meaningful values. He talks about Sao Paulo, Brazil, which banned outdoor advertising entirely. This mental pollution removal drastically changed the city's atmosphere. He and Tin even ran an experiment where teenagers and parents discussed their values and consumerism, and it significantly reduced their materialism and increased their self-esteem. This shows we can create a counter-rhythm to the junk values constantly fed to us. And what about overcoming addiction to the self? This might sound a bit deep, but stay with me. Hari explores meditation and even psychedelic-assisted therapy using psilocybin, found in magic mushrooms. Roland Griffith's research at Johns Hopkins showed that supervised psilocybin sessions could lead to profound mystical experiences that people compared to the birth of a child or the death of a parent. These experiences, similar to deep meditation, seem to break our addiction to ourselves and dissolve the ego. They give you a radically different perspective, a powerful sense of connection to others and the world, and help you realize that you don't have to be controlled by your old self-concept. It's a learning experience that shows you the possibility of connection, rather than a magic fix. Finally, acknowledging and overcoming childhood trauma is another crucial reconnection. Vincent Felietti's follow-up to the ACE study showed that simply having a doctor ask about a patient's childhood trauma, acknowledge it, and offer compassion could efficiently provide a massive reduction in humiliation and poor self-concept, leading to significantly fewer doctor visits and less physical mental distress. It's like a secular version of confession, and perhaps one of the most audacious solutions restoring a hopeful and secure future through something like a universal basic income (UBI). Evelyn Forget's research on a 1970s Canadian UBI experiment showed significant reductions in hospitalizations, improved school performance, and parents spending more time with kids. Rutger Bregman, a UBI champion, highlights how it empowers people to say no to degrading jobs, allowing them to pursue work that's truly valuable and meaningful. Imagine a world where fulfilling work isn't a freakish exception, but a given. So what's the big takeaway from Lost Connections? It's this: you're not a machine with broken parts. Hart passionately argues that you are an animal whose needs are not being met. These needs include community, meaningful values, not materialistic ones, meaningful work, connection to the natural world, respect, and a secure future. Our culture has become very bad at meeting these psychological needs, which is a crucial reason for our widespread depression and anxiety. It's not just serotonin, it's society. It's not your brain, it's your pain. The book isn't saying medication is always bad or that biological factors don't exist, they do, but it argues that focusing only on the biological and ignoring the social and psychological factors is a massive systemic error, perpetuated partly by the huge profits of the pharmaceutical industry and a political system that prefers individual fixes over societal change. Hari admits that making these changes in his own life, spending less time puffing up his ego, seeking material possessions, and more time on intrinsic values and releasing trauma, massively reduced his own depression. But he stresses that he was fortunate, and that the onus for solving this problem can't be solely on individuals. His ultimate message is a powerful one: you need your nausea, you need your pain. It is a message, and we must listen to the message. All this depression and anxiety we see around us, it's telling us that something has gone wrong with the way we live. We need to stop trying to silence or pathologize that pain. Instead, we need to listen to it, honor it, and follow it back to its true, often societal source. Only then can we truly begin to overcome it together. This book really changed how I think about my own feelings and the world around me. It's a call to action, not just for individuals but for all of us as a society, to reclaim our lost connections and build a world that better meets our fundamental human needs. If any of this resonated with you, I highly recommend picking up Lost Connections. It might just change how you see everything.